Hi everybody, it's Jill from Park at Theme Parks Edition, and in today's video we are going to address the topic that is on all of our minds right now, which is when will the theme parks be reopening? This is a very difficult question to answer, and of course none of us has a crystal ball and we can't predict the future exactly. But I do have some predictions based on some research that I've done, and I want to share that information with you and tell you those insights. And I basically have two parts to this video. The first part is going to be some questions that we have to ask ourselves before we can make any predictions. I have a list of 3 questions that we're going to go through. And then after I go through those questions, then I have 2 predictions about what's going to happen with theme parks. Before I launch into this really heavy topic, I wanted to ask you what rides you are missing the most right now. I thought that I would put together a little video that pays tribute to some of your favorite rides. So please comment below and let me know what it is. It can be anything. It can be a roller coaster, it can be a ride at Disney, it can be a carnival ride. I don't know. Comment below, let me know. Tell me what you're missing and I will put together a little video for you that shows clips from those rides. Don't forget to do that. Comment right now. In an effort to keep things simple for you and to not overwhelm you, I have decided to focus on one state and the way that it relates to COVID-19 and the reopening of that state. So I have decided to focus on California, since 4 of my favorite amusement parks are there: Six Flags Magic Mountain, Disneyland, Knott's Berry Farm, and Universal Studios. Let's just jump right into the questions next. So when it comes to reopening theme parks or any big public place, everything revolves around safety. So I feel like the 3 questions that relate to theme parks that we have to ask ourselves are, number 1, at what capacity in terms of how many people that come into the park is considered safe? Number 2, is it realistic to open up a theme park when we haven't come out with a vaccine and we haven't reached herd immunity? And number 3, how much are the hospitals being overwhelmed? How are they doing with the cases that they have? Do they have the supplies they need? And I think those are the 3 basic questions that we have to ask ourselves as we begin to think about reopening certain places. A term that I'm probably going to use a lot in this video is herd immunity. So I wanted to read you the definition just in case it's a little bit confusing. It says herd immunity happens when so many people in a community become immune to an infectious disease that it stops the disease from spreading. This can happen in 2 ways. Number 1, many people contract the disease and in time build up an immune response to it, which is a natural immunity. And number 2, many people are vaccinated against the disease to achieve immunity. Just wanted to share a little bit more important information before I dive into my predictions so that you can kind of see where this is all coming from. So Governor Gavin Newsom is the governor of California, and there's 6 goals in regards to California lifting their shelter-in-place order. The first is to increase testing to track potential cases. The second is to prevent the infection in high-risk people. Number 3, expand hospital capacity to handle surges. Number 4, develop therapeutics. Number 5, ensure social distancing at schools and other gathering spots. And number 6, draft guidelines for future stay-at-home orders. As I was reading Governor Newsom's article that talks about how he wants to reopen California, I also found another article in the LA Times that talks about a potential timeline for California reopening. Governor Newsom has not said when he will lift the shelter-in-place order, so that's going to be up to him. But the LA Times interviewed an epidemiologist and asked for a potential outline. And in that interview, the epidemiologist said that most likely, if Californians did return to work, it wouldn't be until June. So you can imagine how this affects theme parks when you think about all of the employees who have to return to theme parks to run them. And if even the most basic employees are probably not returning to work until June, you can imagine how this will affect the theme park industry, especially when you consider that theme parks aren't essential. Even though I consider them essential for my well-being, and you probably consider them essential for your well-being, we just have to kind of look at the facts and the realities of the situation. Okay, I promise I'm getting to my predictions, I just wanted to go over a few more things before I tell you my 2 predictions so that you can understand how I came to these predictions. So let's talk about the good news and the bad news as it relates to COVID-19 and theme parks in California. So the good news is that hospitals have not been overwhelmed by COVID-19 as much as was expected. In fact, some of the California hospitals have been able to send some of their medical staff to New York and other places that have more cases of COVID-19. So that is really good news. It's also good news that the people of California seem to have taken the shelter-in-place order pretty seriously. So that will mean that things will probably be able to open up quicker because people have been more compliant. The other promising news in California and throughout the world is that the antiviral medication used for Ebola, called remdesivir, is showing a lot of promise in clinical trials. So it will be interesting to see what happens with that and if that will actually be an effective treatment for the majority of people who have COVID-19. There's also going to be more testing available in the future, not just testing for COVID-19, but also testing for the antibodies. And while I am definitely an optimist, I do have to face the reality that there is some bad news. First and foremost, we all know that we do not have a vaccine for COVID-19. And not only do we not have a vaccine, but the soonest we would have one is in 12 to 18 months. So that's not very good news for us. In order to reach herd immunity, where so many people are immune, basically 90% of the population is immune to COVID-19, is going to take quite some time without a vaccine. With Disneyland, they get 50,000 visitors a day. They get between 16 and 18 million visitors a year. So it's very difficult for Disney to manage those numbers and to make it safe for people in regards to COVID-19, because unfortunately everything with this disease comes back to numbers. Now that I've shared with you some of the good and bad news, let's go back and address some of the questions. And feel free to comment below, because you might have a different opinion than I do, which is totally fine, and I would love to hear your thoughts. So the first question that I had asked was, at what capacity is it safe to open up in regards to COVID-19, to reopen something like Disneyland? And when you think about it, it really just depends on how much immunity we have and if we have a vaccine, which isn't going to be for a while. So it doesn't really make sense to open up the gates for 50,000 people per day, because there's just no way to keep it safe when you have that many people. Okay, so addressing my second question, which was, is it realistic to open up a theme park without a vaccine and without herd immunity? The answer is obviously no, because there's just too many people that we put at risk. Even if we ask all of the immunocompromised people to stay home, it's still too much of a risk, and it's too much of a liability for Disney or for Six Flags or for Universal or for Cedar Fair or any theme park that has big numbers coming through. Now, the one thing that could change is remdesivir, the antiviral / Ebola medication that's being used to treat COVID-19. As more clinical trials come out and as the results come in that show that people are responding well, that could change things, and that could especially change the amount of time that people have to stay in the hospital who have COVID-19, which kind of talks about my question number 3, which is how much has hospitalization decreased by the time the theme park wants to reopen? Because that's a huge part of this, is, are the hospitals handling the cases that they have? Are they able to have enough supplies to treat the people that come in? And I think if they have the medication that's treating people and it's working effectively, then they are going to have shorter patient stays in the hospital for COVID-19, and they're going to be able to get those people back out into the community, and those people will hopefully be immune. And then we will reach herd immunity faster. And so I do think that that could make a difference. I know that COVID-19 doesn't like sunlight, so I'm sure we can expect some treatments in that capacity as well, with light therapy and things like that. Those are my thoughts. And based on those thoughts, we're going to jump into my predictions finally. Okay, like I said, I have two predictions about theme parks. I'm going to use Disneyland for all intents and purposes just because they are one of the most popular theme parks in California and their numbers are big, and I feel like if Disneyland makes the decision to reopen, that other theme parks are probably going to follow suit. So my first prediction is that Disney parks will not open until we have a vaccine or until we've reached herd immunity. Now, we already know that Disney is furloughing 43,000 employees, and in the contract, that furlough is for 12 months. So I think Disney even knows that worst case scenario, they might not open up for another year. Now, that being said, that leads me to my second prediction. I don't think Disney parks are going to open up fully, but I do think that they're going to do a partial opening, very similar to what Shanghai Disneyland is doing right now. And I'm going to read the little excerpt off of the Disney website so that you can kind of get an idea of what I'm talking about. Shanghai Disneyland remains closed as we continue to closely monitor health and safety conditions and follow the direction of government regulators. However, as the first step of phased reopening, Shanghai Disney Resort will partially resume operations on March 9th, 2020, with a limited number of shopping, dining, and recreational experiences available in Disneytown, Wishing Star Park, and Shanghai Disneyland Hotel. Each of these resort locations will operate under limited capacity and reduced hours of operation. The Disney Car and Coach Park and the Disneytown parking lot will also reopen. So as you read through this, I feel like this is a pretty good indicator of what's going to happen to other Disney resorts, including the ones in California and Florida. I think parts of Disney are definitely going to reopen, and I think one of the first sections that will reopen is Downtown Disney. And they're probably going to open a handful of restaurants, just a few to begin with, to keep the numbers down. They will see how that goes. It makes sense because I think some restaurants will be opening in June when a lot of employees can go back to work in California. So since the restaurants are there, it makes sense that some of those restaurants will reopen. And maybe some shops, and it will be probably similar to the way we have to wait in line to go to Costco, where they only allow a certain amount of people in the warehouse and they space the tables far apart, and the restaurants have taken measures to adequately sanitize and prepare for reopening while maintaining social distancing and cleanliness. So that's my prediction, and I predict that reopening of those few restaurants and shops in Downtown Disney is definitely going to be a trial run to see how things go and to see what can expand from there. So that was my second prediction, was that just parts of the park will reopen. And I also predict the same thing for Universal City Walk area. I predict that they will open up some of their restaurants as well before they open up the park. And I also predict that when the parks open, it's probably not going to be the whole park. They might open just certain sections of the park. I don't know if they would ever just consider opening like Fantasyland for one day or Tomorrowland or something like that. I could be totally wrong about that, so don't quote me. Again, I'm not an expert and I don't have a crystal ball. Just wanting to give you guys some answers and some things to think about. And so I think it's going to be a while before theme parks open. I would be very surprised if we are able to get on any roller coasters or rides this year. I know that everyone probably wants to throw tomatoes at me like rotten fruit right now, because I know that that's not what anybody wants to hear. But I also feel that some of these things are really important to think about because we need to have realistic expectations about when we're going to be able to go back. Honestly, I am not expecting the parks to open up any sooner than next year. I'm hoping that we can come up with a vaccine sooner, and I'm hoping that some of these medications and treatments that we're trying are going to be effective and speed up the process, and I hope that I'm wrong. I really, really want to be wrong about these predictions. I'm hoping for all good things. But I also want everybody to be safe too, because one of the people coming on my Disneyland trip was going to be my mom, and she is in that high risk population because of her age. Even if it was open, I wouldn't take her because it's just too risky without a vaccine and without having reached herd immunity. Also, another thing that I'm sure has occurred to a lot of you, but perhaps you haven't wanted to acknowledge it in your minds or out loud, is the fact that if school is not in session in California or some of these other places, and there's talk that some schools might not even start in the fall, they might have to start in January. So if our basic systems like schools and other government buildings and things like that aren't open, then we can be sure that theme parks will be probably some of the last places to open. Those are my thoughts. I would love to hear your thoughts too. Do you think things will open up in phases? I'm pretty sure they will. That's what the governor of California plans to do with everything. It's going to be open in phases. Some restaurants will open, some other places might open. Schools will open later, but it's said that they're going to be staggered on a staggered schedule, where some students either come in the morning and some come in the afternoon, or they just come on different days. So I'm just interested to hear your thoughts. Before I made this video, I was in the process of making 2 videos, one for my Cedar Point series. I'm going to do a Cedar Point do's and don'ts list, very similar to my Disneyland do's and don'ts videos. If you've seen those 2, I will link them in the description. And then I had also just interviewed a good friend of mine who went to Disneyland with a baby and talked about his experience there. And I wanted to tell you all about the baby care center and their trip report and all the things I learned from that. I will still be releasing those videos. I think I want to do some more updates on COVID-19 and how they relate to theme park closures. And if I have any news, you will definitely be the first to know. And if you have any news, definitely comment below and let me know so that I can stay up to date. Thank you so much for watching my channel, for watching my videos, for supporting me. It means the world to me. Please subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and please give me a follow on social media. Instagram is @LoveToParkIt, and Facebook is Park It Theme Parks Edition. Thank you so much. Have a great day, and I will talk to you later. Bye.